So the obvious answer to today's question, which is why do I read every single genre there is on planet Earth, is the same reason that I'm overweight. And it's just because I'm greedy. I want to eat all the food. I want to read all the books. However, if I want to make a go of this YouTube thing properly, I'm going to probably need to learn how to articulate my thoughts and feelings a bit better. So in this video, I'm going to try my best to explain to you why I think you should read more genres, why you should diversify, and why reading different genres, it'll just make your reading experience way better. As we go through this video, I'm going to give you loads of class recommendations as well for different genres. So there'll be thriller recommendations, romance, fantasy, romantasy, lit RPG, you name it, there's going to be Recs for you. So yeah, if you want some class recommendations, watch till the end of this video, because I've got loads for you. If you're not already subbed to this page, just sub already. I love having more mates, it makes me feel better about my life. What would you get out of subbing to my page? Dressing gowns, man boobs, mental health chats, class books, all of it. All of it. Anyway, let's get into it. Reason numero as to why I think you should read loads of different genres is because stories are bigger than genres. I hate the fact that we narrow books down to genres and people, including me, I've done it in the past, will just read one genre because I tell myself I only like this specific genre. But I ask you this question. Do you only watch a specific genre of film? Because the answer to that question is probably no. And if it is yes, wait for my next points, because I might be able to do you with that one. But I don't just watch one specific film genre. I watch them all. I love romance films. I love thriller stuffs. I love scary movies. I love jumpy, gory, minging films where people get unalived and sent to Jesus in the most minging ways. I love fantasy films. I love all of them. So why on earth would I niche down and just read one specific genre? I don't get it. For me, I'll always read every genre, apart from maybe horror. Horror books don't scare me. I think the beauty of a horror book, or at least a horror film, is that it makes you jump, and horror books don't make me jump. So I just miss that element when it comes to the book. But anyway, that's reason numero un. Reason number deux. Because you'll find unexpected treasures, and I truly mean this. Last year, some of my favourite books that I ever read were ones that I just never expected to love. And I find that sometimes when you step outside your comfort zone, you'll just find stuff and books that you never knew you needed. Number three, it keeps reading fresh and exciting. I'm a massive mood reader, so I will sometimes wake up and I'll be like, I just don't fancy reading a crime book today. But that don't matter, because I read whatever the hell I want. If I don't fancy crime, I might pick up a romance book. If I don't fancy romance, I'll pick up a fantasy. I'll always have something that I can go to. And I think one of the reasons people get into reading slumps is because they're just so niche down and they tell themselves that they only like a specific type of book. And even worse, some people tell themselves they like specific types of tropes. And I think when you embed into your head that you only like a specific genre, it just closes so many doors and causes so many reading slumps. I forgot what number we're on, but I think we're on number 4. And if we are on number 4, it's because every genre has something unique to offer. Fantasy will give you adventure. Some horror books, for you, maybe not for me, it'll scare shit out of you and keep you on edge. Romance can be all emotional, and sci-fi books get you to thinking. I just don't get why you'd just choose one. Numero 5, which I think is 5 in French. I think it helps you appreciate writing in new ways. When you read across different genres, it lets you see how different authors approach storytelling, world building, character development, plot. I know I've touched on this a little bit, but number 6 is, I just think sometimes different moods call for different books. I wake up some days and I just fancy going on a mad adventure. And then other days, if my head's not in the right place and I just can't be arsed, I'll just think, I'm just going to read a little rom-com. When you broaden your horizons and you don't niche yourself down, I just think you've always got something to fit the mood that you're in. Reading different genres also breaks down stereotypes about genres. Because we've all heard people say it before, romance is cheesy, sci-fi is too complex, horror's too gory. I'm here to tell you, after reading all these genres, that not all books are the same, believe it or not. If they were, we wouldn't need to read multiple books. We would just read one and go, they're all shit. But they're not. There's some class books and some shit books in every single genre. But you've got to try them to find out which ones are which. We're nearly at the end of this list now, and then I'll actually give you some class book recommendations. But it sparks interesting conversation as well. I've met so many new friends in the community from reading different genres. I've met bear mates from reading romantasy, from reading sci-fi, fantasy. I understand that from a content creation point of view, it's probably not beneficial for me to read loads of books because no one's got any idea what they want to talk about when they come to my page. I read for me. I read to make friends. I read to talk about books. If people want to follow me because they like me, then wicked. If they don't like my taste in books, they can move on to the next fella. But I just think reading more literature just introduces you to so many more people and opens up so many more conversational doors. I think it also expands your perspective as well, because although I do say a great story is a great story, obviously certain genres will have specific things that they're going to cover. Things like historical fiction teach you about things in the past. Sci-fi explores the opposite in the future. Contemporary books deal with real-world issues. I think reading multiple genres can just widely broaden your understanding of the world if you want it to. Obviously, if you just want to pick up a book and get lost in it and take no hidden messages away from it, you can in any genre. But there's always going to be hidden meanings in books if you want to find them. And lastly, if none of them convince you, then books are meant to be explored. And I'm an explorer. Call me Robinson Crusoe. There's just a whole universe of books out there to be explored. Why limit yourself? The best part of reading for me is the journey of reading, of exploring new books, exploring new genres, new characters, new writing styles. If you're still watching at this point, then this is just class, because the chances are that I've convinced you to maybe diversify a little bit in what you're reading. Nothing makes me happier than when people say, Tyrone, I've read this book on your recommendation. It's something I'd never tried before, and I bloody loved it. So now I'm going to give you some recommendations in loads of different genres, and hopefully you'll come back to me and say, Tyrone, thank you, them books were class. We'll start with thriller books because they were closest to me. So Jack Carr's The Terminal List is class. If you want a fast-paced thriller involving government conspiracies, revenge, this is your book. This man gets done dirty by the military, and he's like, listen, you've took some stuff from me. You've took everything from me. I'm going to show you what's up. And when I say this man goes on a revenge mission, some minging stuff in here. Dirty, horrible, gross scenes where people get sent to Jesus. And you're going to love every minute of it. Next up, we've got my favourite, M.W. Craven's Puppet Show, which is part of the Washington Post series. This duo in this series, Washington Poe and Tilly Bradshaw, are without a doubt the best crime duo in any police procedural book on planet Earth. Until you prove me otherwise. It is a series. The books can be read as standalones, but if you want to read book one first, this is it. And it just gives a bit of backstory to characters. The Plea by Steve Kavanagh is part of his Eddie Flynn series. This is more of a legal drama, so it's set in a courtroom where they're using like legal procedures and stuff to either get people away with crimes. There's unalivings where obviously people are getting sent to Jesus. There's morally grey decisions. If you like legal dramas set in courtroom, Steve Kavanagh, read him. This book is class, but in a completely different way. David Baldacci, Calamity of Souls, is set in the late 60s when there were obviously massive racial divides in the deep south in America between blacks and whites. This follows a white lawyer who's defending a black man who's been wrongly convicted of a crime. Very similar to like To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee. But there's loads of twists, it's fast-paced, short chapters, and it was just completely different to a lot of other Baldacci books that I've read. There's a bit at the start of this book as well where he said that he'd been writing this book for like 10 years and didn't really know how to release it. But he did, and boy, I'm glad he did. Definitely highly recommend this one. If, like me, you're a bit of a sicko in the head and you like minging, gross, police procedural, crime, thriller books, Chris Carter's your man. This man writes gore and violence in that genre like no other. It is police procedural. It's part of the Robert Hunter series. This is not book one. Book one is called The Crucifix Killer. So if you want to read it in order, start with that one. Go on Google. You can do your own research. But the short chapters, the fast-paced. Again, these people, the way they get sent to Jesus, you won't wish it on your worst enemy. Well, you might, because some of my enemies are dicks. But some of the ways that these people get sent to Jesus, oh, minging in the best way. Lastly, for police procedurals with a twist, is In the Blink of an Eye by Joe Callahan. This is also part of a series. Book 2 is out now. I think Book 3 is coming out this year. These, again, are set in the UK, but the main character, DCS Cat Frank, is teamed up with AI hologram detective where they're trying to solve cold cases, and the human and the AI are just forever at loggerheads. AI is like, human, you're stupid. And she's like, nah, this is never going to work. It's class. It's really good. It's just so interesting when you think about how much people panic about where we're going with AI. And I think the author does a brilliant job touching on where, as humans, we might be leading with letting AI do jobs that we've always done in the past. It also touches really well on what it is to be a widow, because the author of this book is widowed and the character in the book is widowed, so she starts to go through a healing journey as well of what it's like to be a widow. So if you're interested in that, In the Blink of an Eye by Joe Callahan. Here's my fantasy book recommendations. I could give you more, but the video would just go on forever if I gave you every fantasy book I loved. Starting off with The Poppy War by R.F. Kuang. I left it in this book because I couldn't get it out. I've been trying for ages. But anyway, this book, I absolutely loved The Poppy War. I've not read The Dragon Republic or The Burning God yet, but I actually plan on doing a reread of The Poppy War this year because it's one of them books I think that you can take as little or as much as you want from. And I finished this book and I thought, this is class. It's dark academia setting. It starts off in a war college. She's got these shamanic abilities that make her rate hard, and then war looms and shit goes down. This book gets dark towards the end. But then after I'd finished this book, I realised that it's actually inspired on a historic war in Japan. And I was like, I've probably missed a trick with this book. Because I rated it, I think, like 4.5 stars. But I'm going to reread it this year. And I think now I know a bit more about the story behind this, I'll probably love it even more. So I definitely recommend The Poppy War by R.F. Kuang. Blood Over Brighthaven by M.L. Wang was one of my favourite reads this year. I read it at the start of this year. The book absolutely slaps. The magic system is insane. It's a bit disgusting once you actually realise the energy source behind the magic system. It's like vile. It'll be an easy read. Make sure you're in a good place mentally before you read this book. And while I'm on the topic of the author, the same author also writes The Sword of Kagan, which is equally as emotionally devastating. I think I've figured out now that M.L. Wang just writes fantastic, emotionally devastating fantasy with wicked magic systems, but they are going to rip your heart out, stand on it, and just boot it so you can't recover it. So Sword of Kagan by M.L. Wang and Blood Over Brighthaven by M.L. Wang, definitely recommend you try these. Just make sure you're in a good mental headspace before you do. Shadow of the Gods by John Gwynne. Absolutely love this book. It was fast-paced, relatively short chapters when it comes to a fantasy book. There's 3 points of view and all 3 characters are class. As the story progresses, the characters' journeys kind of start merging together and you're just like, yes, you can't help but root for all 3 characters. It's refreshing to see a male author writing strong female protagonists as well. There's 2 females in this story and 1 male, and both the females are kick-ass. I mean, the bloke is right hard as well. They're all just right hard. And there's dragons and stuff in it. That's a dragon, by the way, breathing fire. If you've not subbed to my page for long enough, yeah, that's weirdo now. Anyway, character-driven books. The First Law trilogy. The Blade itself is book 1. There's 2 others over there that I couldn't be bothered to get out. These are very, very character-driven books. Joe Abercrombie is probably the master of writing characters and dialogue. I'm not going to say you're going to love all the characters. They are very morally grey, but you'll definitely root for them. Glockter, who's one of the characters in this book, is just one of the best characters I've ever read. Don't expect loads of plot, at least not in book 1. I've only read book 1 of this so far. I need to get into book 2. But it very much is a setup for this world, and the world is just dark, it's minging. It's classed as grimdark fantasy, so it is like, you're not going to get everything you want. Some of the characters are going to piss you off, and you're just going to have to accept it and love the journey. Joe Abercrombie, The Blade itself, read it. This one, The Lies of Locke Lamora by Scott Lynch, were one of my favourite fantasy reads last year. I don't think it gets talked about enough, but I understand why. Because it's not epic fantasy. It's not going to be crazy fast-paced. It ain't your usual kind of fantasy book. It's more of a story of like camaraderie and found family and heists and mischievous little shits just doing foolishness in a town or city I can only describe as like Venice. I don't know if you can see it front cover there, but that looks like Venice, doesn't it? Anyway, these blokes are just cheeky, naughty, the dialogue's class, it's funny. It's just a wicked book, and I don't understand why people don't talk about this book so much. I know there's a bit of controversy behind the fact that it might never be completed, this series, but this can be read as a standalone. I've not even read book 2 and 3 yet, and I'm happy. It was wrapped up nicely. You don't need to read book 2 and book 3. By all means, read book 1, and then if book 4 comes out at any point, just pick up rest. Crack on with him. But if not, Lies of Locke Lamora by Scott Lynch is bloody class. I've got some Romantasy for you now, because I know how popular that is in the year of 2025. Starting with the Shepherd King duology, One Dark Window and Two Twisted Crowns. I don't know if I've got these back to front, but who gives a sugar honey iced tea? Anyway, these books were class. They're like gothic romantasy. I don't really know if these should be targeted as romantasy. They are in romantasy sections in any book you go to. There's not much in the sense of like, I mean, like the smutty sort of stuff in books. Like, there is a romance subplot, but I think it edges more towards fantasy than romantasy. But anyway, it's class. It's gothic. It's got a really cool tarot card magic system. It's just one of them books that when you read it, you feel immersed in the world. It just feels like everywhere you walk in your head, and I picture books like rate shit in my head. As you're walking around, I can just imagine smoke everywhere, and I feel like I'm on Stars in Their Eyes, and I'm just going to walk through and be like, tonight, Matthew, I'm going to be Voldemort, because I look a bit like Voldemort. But anyway, gothic, fantasy, cool magic system, and there's only 2 books. There's not many authors at minute writing duologies. So yeah, read it. Next up, we've got A Fate Inked in Blood by Danielle L. Jensen. I bloody love this book. I thought it was fantastic. It's more of an adventure, this. So it's basically Freya. I think that's what her name was. I read it towards the start of last year. And some sexy man, they go on an adventure. And the man's not actually morally grey. He's quite a nice guy. They go on this mad adventure. It, again, leans a bit more towards like a fantasy ad than it does romance. They're not bonking every other chapter. It's not like Spicy or like that. But it's just a really good book. It was my first ever Norse-inspired fantasy book. I didn't find it too overwhelming. Yeah, they use words like jarl and things like that, but I kind of picked it up as I went along. And I'm really excited for book 2, which I think's out in May this year. So yeah, highly recommend if you like Norse history and things like that and Vikings, to try A Fate Inked in Blood by Danielle L. Jensen. I know she writes another series called Bridge Kingdom. Not read it yet. It is on my shelf, but I've been told that's class as well. Lastly, in Romantasy, that's Fourth Wing. That's me breathing fire. If you stayed till this point of the video, you'll understand why I breathed fire earlier, because any book that's got dragons in it, I normally say to people, read it. It's got dragons. Anyway, Fourth Wing, really good book. I think if you go into this book expecting epic fantasy, you're not going to get it. Although it does appear that she wrote this book as more of a romancy book with a dark academia feel, with trials and talking dragons, and then almost just switched a little bit to more political intrigue, more of an epic fantasy. Seems like she's trying to go down that route with this series. But anyway, I'm not reading Iron Flame because I've tried it twice and the miscommunication trope in that book just frustrates the life out of me. And I've got too many good books on my shelf to read for me to try and force myself to read a book that's really popular just to try and get clicks and views. But if you want to read this as a standalone, yeah, there's a bit of a cliffhanger at the end, but you can still read this as a standalone and thoroughly enjoy it. I did. I'm not angry that I'm not going to continue the series, but I think this was a really, really good book. I love talking dragons. Tern and Andana are just beautiful. Violet, in book 1 at least, fantastic. She's got EDS, I don't know much about, but it's a disease that Rebecca Yarros deals with. So the disability representation in the book is fantastic. She doesn't let her disability stop her from doing stuff. She's badass. She's right hard. And if you are interested in spicing books, there is some shagging in it. That way inclined. I'm now going to go into what I've classed as the other category, because I just didn't know where to put them. I didn't know if they were like a subgenre of fantasy. But before I do that, if you have enjoyed this video, please don't forget to like it and comment. And if you don't find me like an annoying pest and you've not already subbed to the page, just sub, because it massively helps me out. I put a lot of effort into these videos, editing them and all mess I've created. I've got books everywhere that you can't see that I've got to tidy up after, and it's all for your entertainment. So yeah, these books here. I've got 3 manga books to start off with. So someone put me onto manga recently and said, Tyrone, why don't you try reading manga? And I was like, I'm greedy. I'll read it all. I want all of it. Where shall I start? So then they were like, well, try Chainsaw Man. So I picked this one up first, which is Chainsaw Man by Tatsuki Fujimoto. I butcher these names when I try and read them, by the way. And it was class. Really enjoyed it. I've only read book 1. This is the only manga book I've read so far. And it's basically about a bloke that's addicted to boobs and he's got chainsaws for arms and he goes around chopping stuff up. Yeah. You can knock out a manga book in half an hour to an hour, depending on how quick you read, because obviously if you look, you know, it's not all writing, is it? There's picture stuff. The illustrations are class. It's just a fun time to read manga. Really, really enjoyed this. I don't know if I'm going to continue this series or dive straight into one of the other books that I've got, which I'm going to show you now. But yeah, Chainsaw Man, definitely recommend that. These other 2 were recommended by some of you lot. So this one's called Keiju number 8. I don't know what it's about, but again, highly recommended from the community. So if you want to try it out, I'm not going to tell you it's class because I've not read it yet, but loads of people have told me it is. And this one's by Naoya Matsumoto. There you go. Apparently that's TV series as well. And then the last one, The Apothecary Diaries by Natsu Hyuga. Again, no idea what that's about. I think this is a little bit more maybe YA side of manga. But I don't know. The illustrations in it look really cool. So I'm going to read more manga in 2025. Lastly, but certainly not least, when it comes to the other category, how many times do I need to tell you to read Dungeon Crawler Call by Matt Dinnerman? This book is insane. It is just fantastic. For anyone that games, i.e. Xbox, PC, PlayStation, or anyone that don't game, you know, I'm an ex-gamer. By ex-gamer, I mean my wife forced me to sell my PlayStation and PC because I was spending no time with her and the kids. I used to love RPG games growing up, so things like Fable, Fallout, Borderlands, anything that was like level-based and progressive. And this book is a video game in a book. So it's basically a bloke in a pair of boxer shorts and some Crocs who stood outside having a cigarette, and then all of a sudden he turns around, no buildings are there, and these aliens come on this town and they're like, oh, everyone, we took over Earth. Aliens have took over Earth. They're playing a massive like TV reality show with humans being the entertainment. They've got to go through all of these different dungeons, and if they get to end at dungeons, then they can go back to Earth. But within the dungeons, there's all sorts of stuff. There's ogres, orcs, trolls, all sorts of things that they've got to get past. But as they start getting past them all, they start leveling up, they get new loot. It is just absolutely wild. Carl is cool. Carl's the main character, but he's not really, is he? Princess Donut, who's a talking cat, is the main character. She's fantastic. She's sassy. She's everything a cat in a book should be. She's just a queen. She shouldn't be called Princess Donut. It should be called Queen Donut. Please read Dungeon Crawler Call by Matt Dinnerman. It's on Kindle Unlimited. So if you don't want to buy the book because they are quite pricey on Amazon, you can just Kindle Unlimited it. And you're welcome. Because once you've read this book, you're going to dive into the rest of the series. I'm currently on book 4. I've listened to book 4 because I got loads of recommendations from you lot saying, Tyrone, you need to listen to this audiobook. Man, oh man, this is the best audiobook I've ever heard in my entire life. And I've listened to a few decent audiobooks. It takes a lot for me to get immersed in an audiobook. I prefer reading physical, but this audiobook, if I can recommend any audiobook on planet Earth, it would be Dungeon Crawler Call by Matt Dinnerman. So yeah, you're welcome. I'm relatively new to sci-fi, so I've not got many recommendations to give you. The only books I read last year in the sci-fi genre were Red Rising, which is fantastic. This is a book that follows a man called Darrow. It is set on Mars in a time when humanity from Earth have basically gone to Mars, and we've set up camp, and there's a tier system. So the reds are bottom of the food chain, the golds are top of the food chain, and it is very heavy on political intrigue, government conspiracies, and there's a story of revenge, and boy, does he go out there to try and get his revenge. I'm not going to tell you any more than this book, other than the fact that it is genuinely really, really good. I'm told that book 2 and 3 are even better. I've not read them yet, but Red Rising as an entry point to a sci-fi series for me just blew me away. I thought it was fantastic. Next up, we've got Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir. I know this is hit and miss for a lot of people, but I thought this book was absolutely stunning. It's a story about a teacher who wakes up on a spaceship and he ain't got a clue why he's there, so he's got to try and figure out why he's on this spaceship. At some point during the story, he figures out, actually, I am humanity's last hope to try and save Earth. And en route, he meets an unlikely friend. That is all I can say to you. It's the most beautiful friendship in any book ever. It is just class. It's up there with Gimli and Legolas. It really is. What a book. I do plan on reading more sci-fi this year. I've got a few behind me. I've got Hyperion. Loads of people have recommended that to me. There's another series, the Sun Eater series. I keep seeing that everywhere. I'm really excited to try and read that. So if you've got any good sci-fi recommendations for me that aren't Dune, I have tried reading Dune, but there's just so many complex things in there. I think I need to build up to that. Yeah. What else we're missing? Romance? Yeah. I don't know why I've not read more romance. Romance, I can only hold up one book because I gave the other two away last year after I'd finished them. I read Part of Your World and Yours Truly by Abby Jimenez. They were absolutely fantastic. Class, really funny, relatable characters. It's actually interesting reading these books as a man because the way that Abby Jimenez writes men, I personally think is so healthy. The men that she wrote, at least in book 1 and 2, in Daniel and Jacob, were just lovely men. And I understand that. I think as a female author, she's probably writing what she wishes most men were like. And as women, or men attracted to men, reading these books, you probably read these and think, bloody hell, I wish my fellow were like that. So I probably shouldn't like it that much because it just gives me like a standard that I need to try and reach. But anyway, even me, reading these books, I read and thought, bloody hell, I need to fix up. I need to be more like Jacob. I think we're done. I really enjoyed that. I'm going to show you the mess that I've created in this bedroom because obviously most people when they go on YouTube, they've got all these perfectly edited videos, haven't they, where they don't show you shit behind the scenes. You ready for it? Oh, look at this. This is all stuff my wife comes home to. She goes absolutely mad at me, but who cares? It's all for you, isn't it? I mean, obviously that's just washing that needs putting away down there, but you get the point. Loads of books. Do you want to see my other bookshelf? You'd have thought I'd have tidied up my shelves before I've seen you. But I've said it to you. I'm not going to pretend I'm someone I'm not, just to try and get you to follow me. You either love me, Mass, or you don't. If you don't like it, find someone else. If you do like it, just love me, because my dad didn't. Anyway, this has been fun. I'm going, everyone. What a time. I went for a coffee. This has been absolutely class. I love you so much. Subscribe, all that stuff. I'll see you in a bit.